Vive Jam. We just wanted to relay what working with the Vive was like for us. Everybody here is using Unity and Unreal, and we were trying to hit 90 frames per second with our experiences and make sure that they ran properly, but also were interesting. So the area is something like 3 by 4 meters. You hear people say things like 15 by 15 feet, but like you can put them farther apart and stuff. It's just the tracking doesn't get as good if it's farther apart because it's sweeping across a wider space, and it needs that time to be able to track across the stuff. So I've asked some of the developers around what they've learned about VR and the Vives, like developing for room scale, and so this is what they had to say.
I learned that the Vive is an awesome VR platform to develop for, and the controllers are really great to work with. They're really great to kind of interact with, and you can do so many interesting things by picking things up and throwing them. It's really natural. You can move around in a certain area, but it's fairly constrained. It's not enormous, and also people aren't going to have enormous areas to work around. So you do need to give people the freedom to kind of walk around a little bit, but also be careful that they don't then kind of go outside of the area, and make sure you kind of know exactly where that is and have a bit of a safe zone. So they can reach out a little bit but not move their arms outside of the zone and stuff like that. We were using Unity and it worked really well for us. We were quite surprised. We kept all the dynamic lighting on. We had a fairly simple scene. We had loads of characters, easily under 90 frames per second limit, so it was great.
You get a lot of space to work with. It does definitely change a few challenges, especially if you want to try to do things that are multiple levels. You got to keep in mind the boundary, the fact that every boundary is not going to be the same either. All the core game mechanics can be emulated using the Razer Hydra, but you still won't have that walking around feeling. I'm going to wrap up what we did for the jam into a few assets, and I'm going to release that so that other people can start from there.
And the problem with the Hydra is when you're tracking things, it's not one-to-one, so you get a skewed perspective of what VR is. You're throwing things and it's not quite accurate. The first thing I noticed is when you've got one-to-one tracking, it's so intuitive, people just know stuff. We had a game where you're supposed to throw things, and as a developer I was really afraid that people wouldn't get it. You'd have to explain it slowly and work your way through. But that's one-to-one. It's just walking around a space as well. You realise you'd assume people would be afraid of walking, that they're kind of worried there's going to be walls. Not really, because walking's natural. You realise so much about VR, if done correctly, is obvious. It's like to the person playing. Our team was split on a bunch of different ideas. I wanted it to clip to your hand, and like you'd move your hand, it would snap like gaming. In game mechanics, you want a kind of guaranteed point of origin. But when you move your hand in, we just realized people just want to throw things, and they instantly just go grab, throw. They don't think about it. So you just need a big box. You just need to go whatever. Like you had objects that you put your hand over here, grab, and it would be like that. It's not attached to you anywhere. But people don't care because it's their new reality. They've adapted to it. They can just throw things. It's much more intuitive in VR to just have throwing mechanics that way than it was to try and be one-to-one. If you don't gamify VR, is my point. If you try to gamify it and bring in what you've learned about how to deal with things, it doesn't work.
When you get to test the game, it's the best feeling to be inside your game in a Tron-like way. You're not just testing something on the screen that you've already been working with on the screen. You're going somewhere else. You're transported to another place, and that's really impressive. And you get reinvigorated with more ideas. That under this kind of time constraint, you really have to be careful that the ideas don't overtake that.
The thing that I learned is when you've got a character in there and you can not only get a real sense of the depth, but actually maneuver around it and interact with it, you can connect with it in a way that you don't usually get from either a film or just a regular video game, because it feels like it's there with you. And so we've got this game where you're trying to feed some penguins and trying to stop some other penguins from getting the food. So you kind of feel for the penguins that are really hungry and trying to get the food, and then you've got these kind of bullies that have already eaten and they're trying to get through. So it just enhances it by about 100 times being there with the characters as opposed to seeing them on a screen, or even and being able to walk around them as well and like have them interact as you're walking around them means that you just get so much more of a sense that they're there with you rather than you're watching them, if that makes any sense.
Can sound restricting when you first think about it. You're like, okay, so we're basically constricted to a single room, but that's not the case. You can do a lot of tricks to expand the space. to make people feel like they are in a much larger space. I've heard a lot of people talking about using lifts, so you walk into a lift and then you walk out a door on the other side. I think that's great. It's a really nice way of basically making you feel like you're in a much larger space than the 15-foot. One thing you got to remember is the 15-foot area is tracked 1-to-1, and it's the best tracking on the market at the moment, so people will be immediately sold on the Immersion, which means that if you try and trick it by moving the player, it will make them feel very uncomfortable, because when you're sold so much on the Immersion, any kind of movement that you are not a part of really can make you feel quite uncomfortable. So put them in a lift, make sure the frame of reference that they have is static, and then move them, and then when the doors open and they're somewhere else, then it's all fine.
It's because you're sort of crawling around the 3D space, literally on your hands and knees, you can feel the physicality of the floor, which makes it feel like it's actually real. And it's just basically grounding you inside that game. I didn't want to make a game that would make you feel like you have to climb some stairs, or like originally it was going to be that you're going to move your head above fence and down inside a fence, almost like a shaky hand game where you have to sort of follow the line. It was going to be like that. But then I soon realised that if you suddenly expect players to be able to climb up, and if they don't feel like they're actually physically doing it because they haven't got any touch, they haven't got any force back, then it won't feel real and you just break the whole illusion.
The Portal demo was incredible because it was such a good example of how to do it properly. I think I can't quite put my finger on it, but I think it's a couple of things. One is that it kept you engaged, so there was obviously something to do, something new to turn around and look at, something to pick up. Obviously the humour helps a lot, it drives what you're supposed to do, why you're doing it, and what's coming next. And I also think that you felt like you travelled somewhere, even though you haven't gone anywhere.
What we found, I thought it was interesting, the chaperone system of the bars that come up actually runs independently from your game. So even if you don't have a game running, you can still see the bars come up when you get close. It really seems like room scale VR, where it's a lot of motion going on, lends itself really well to social games and turn taking and the party kind of environment. And so just that sort of friendly, playful environment that it inspires might really do well for things that are like Mario Party style or that sort of stuff. Some of the things to think about is that your start position for your person, you don't know where in that space they're going to be, and so you kind of have to plan your beginning environment for that sort of thing. And realistically, you should always turn off rigid collisions and gravity for your player camera, because if they are walking and their player collides into something but they're physically moving, that's going to be problematic. Or if they fall off of a ledge in virtual reality but they obviously aren't falling in real life, then that's also problematic. So you just may as well turn off physics and collisions for them, but things will still be maybe colliding against them that are dynamic in the environment or colliding with each other with their own physics. People can go through your walls a lot of the time, but typically they will just respect the boundaries of whatever environment you give them because they're so naturally tuned to do so. Obviously, you kind of get used to that and you can start sticking your head through things, and so you'll probably want to have it turn black when somebody does that, but you'll find that people just kind of don't. If something's coming towards them, they will back up, or if there's a wall there, they will naturally not really try to go through it.
You didn't have to tell people don't clip through walls. You don't need to give them warnings. They see a wall, they're going to duck under it. It's really weird to see intuitiveness in VR. You just accept things, you know?
Vive is cool. Join the jams, they're fun.
There's so much more to learn with more stuff. I wish I could just live here, but they won't let me. I've asked, you know?
Thanks for watching. Thanks PlayHubs for hosting it. Thanks Valve for coming and bringing all the sets, letting us use them, and thanks for all the sponsors and everybody that Bossa and everybody that helped put it on. And thanks for watching.